All new tonight, the fight over your unemployment benefits is going to court. 4 Georgians are suing the Georgia Department of Labor. They claim the department has been extremely delayed in processing unemployment insurance benefit claims. The suit hopes to get relief for 3 groups of people. That includes those who the system hasn't determined if they're entitled to benefits, those who are not provided timely appeals when benefits are denied, and others who aren't paid benefits quickly after approval. The plaintiffs are also asking that the state pay people money for damages. We have reached out to the Department of Labor and have not yet heard back.